Hey everybody, welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Thursday the 9th of November. I hope you're having a good week. I was on Facebook. One of the gifts about Facebook is it keeps popping up like memories from, a year ago, 2 years ago. And last week I had a memory pop up from probably about 6 or 8 years ago. And it was a video produced by the Episcopal Church, the Episcopal Church of the United States of America, which is the Anglican Church but in the States, in the United States. And their presiding bishop, Michael Curry, who is the most dynamic preacher, he's amazing. Um, and he was talking about the introduction of the Jesus movement. And it shows him in a church, I think it's a cathedral, but he shows him in the church talking, and then he comes out onto the streets. And he talks about one day when he was a bishop in his home state, he went out to a coffee shop and he ran into this guy. I started talking to him. It turns out he was a missionary, a Mennonite pastor who had been sent to that place to build a new church. But the key was the church wasn't to be built in a building. He was to go in to build church for those people who don't go into church buildings, to reach out to them and share the good news, the gospel with them, as a mission, as a Mennonite pastor. And so Bishop Curry was like, yeah. What if we did that? What if we took the Jesus movement? What if we took the good news of Jesus Christ to the streets and helped other people? And so he, with the clergy and the laity of the many dioceses in the United States, created the Jesus movement, that they were talking about, which is not the movie that was made last spring, and it's not other things that happened in the 60s or 70s. This is talking about a group of people, Anglicans, who are not really known for being really evangelical and getting out and telling people about our faith, about learning how we can come to learn how to speak about our faith in the Lord, our relationship with Jesus. And I'm not talking like a hokey, do you have a personal relationship with Jesus? Because that doesn't have to be hokey. I'm talking about being able to talk about our relationship with Jesus in such a way that it's as natural as me talking about my relationship with my husband, Rob, or with my sister, Jennifer, or whoever, that I would be comfortable just chatting about this person that, that I love and I look up to and I emulate, and how we can do that. And by doing so, how we can then reach other people who quite realistically may have been hurt by the church, by other people's, the way they present Jesus or the way they present God. And though there's so many people in the generations past who have been hurt by the institution of the church or by individuals from churches. And it doesn't have to be the priest. I, over the years, have heard tons of stories about people telling me how, they were trying to do something. One story, and it sounds silly, but this is a big one. A young woman moved into her husband, and she and her husband moved into the area, and they had a couple of little kids, and she had just gone back to work after her maternity leaves, and they wanted to get involved with church, and they were having a church supper, and the invitation went out to all the ladies to bring their baked goods in to, for the desserts for this church supper. And she was like, oh, awesome, yep, I can do that. So she realized she wasn't going to have time to bake because she worked full time, she had the kids, she had all of these, all the things that working moms have to do. And so she went to a bakery and she bought a beautiful pie from this bakery, and she probably paid more for that pie than, the ingredients that would have cost her to make it, to put it together. But she didn't have the time. So she brought that pie and she brought it in and put it in the kitchen, and she went to walk away, and she overheard some of the older women who had been there forever mentioning how this is ridiculous. We can't put that pie out. It's not homemade. They never addressed her. She didn't see her pie on the table. And she told me, this was years later, she told me that she never went back. She did her best to participate in the life of that church in a way that she could do so. And people, I don't think they were trying to be mean, and I don't think they were trying to be mean-spirited. But because it was something that they hadn't experienced, or they didn't appreciate themselves as people who stayed home and made pies all the time and delivered, fresh made pies to the dessert table, they didn't look beyond what she presented on the counter, a store-bought pie, even if it was made at a bakery. What they saw was someone who didn't take the time to make a homemade pie. They didn't look at her and say, "Oh my heavens, like isn't it great that this young family who both worked full-time jobs and they have these kids and they've moved to town, isn't it great that they've come to join our congregation? Isn't it great that she would take the time to go out and buy something and bring it to contribute to the dessert table at our church dinner?" They didn't think in terms of looking beyond the gift that she brought. They weren't even able to acknowledge that it was a gift. But what they did was they shut her down. A woman who was vulnerable and looking for a community felt so hurt by what she was overheard other people saying that she walked away from the church. Now, I would love to tell you that this person met me and thought, "Oh, an awesome pastor, I can go to Rachel's church." But she was so leery of what she would find because my church just looked an awful lot like the church she'd gone to 20 years before. You know, the faces had changed, but the gray hair and the curls and the homemade pies hadn't. There was no way she was going to come into my church. But at least she'd have a conversation with me as a priest. And I appreciated that. Over the years, the church, over the hundreds of years, the church has really seen itself as this place where we have a great message and we have a great thing to offer. And people should be grateful that we are here to offer it and they should come into our doors. Well, this is what I wrote down when I watched this video the other day. I wrote down on my post-it notes. See, I've got post-it notes everywhere. I'm like the queen of post-it notes. I wrote down, the church can no longer wait for the world to come to it. The church must move to meet the people where they are. That's what the Jesus movement is all about. The church must move to meet the people where they are. We have gotten ourselves so wrapped up in this idea that the church is the building and the building has to have insurance and it has to be safe and we have to have windows in every door and we have to have all of these things that make sure that anybody who comes into our building feels comfortable and is safe. Absolutely. I'm not saying we don't. We do have to have those things. But I think that we have thrown the baby out with the bathwater here. We are so focused on making the buildings bigger, better, more beautiful, fitting in Wi-Fi, and then with COVID lining things up for live streaming and all of those things, that we forgot the biggest thing. The reason we're doing those things is for the people. And we've spent so much time doing those things for these people that we forgot to invite the people in. And then when we realized that they weren't coming in, we put in things like live streaming for, Wi-Fi and fancy cameras so that we could reach the people where they are. But are we? Are we reaching people where they are? I know that I'm reaching some of you because you comment and you let me know how things are going and you tell me when I'm wrong and you tell me when something resonates or really strikes home. And that's fantastic. And we have a bit of a relationship. In a new world, we have this like online relationship so that we have a community. But community really also needs to be fleshed out with gathering with people together. That, I heard a speaker, a Christian speaker, talking about, it's great that we have conferences and we gather people together and people can, they come together for conferences and they worship together and then they go home and they have these online churches. That's great. But the online stuff has to be in addition to intentional person things. Now, I know that for some of you, big groups are terrifying. And I'm not suggesting that you all need to go about and find a church. What I'm suggesting is that maybe you need to build a little community. Maybe there's somebody that you could ask to, hey, why don't we get together in person at a coffee shop and watch Church at Home with Rachel together and then have a conversation about whether we agree with her or not. We can do this, which is awesome, but we also need to build community. And I think that's what Archbishop Curry was getting across, is that the church has so for too long thought that if we build it, they will come, until we forgot who they was. We don't even know who we're trying to reach. But what we do know and we do acknowledge is that we have to be together in community, face to face. This is great. This is only one part of it, though. We also need to have people who can pray with each other and can share with each other their stories and their hopes and dreams, and that can support each other in difficult times, face to face. So I guess my question for me as a priest, and my question for our church, Anglican or otherwise, is how do we move away from this idea that the people will come to us and recognize that our true call is to go to the people, to bring the good news of God's love for people to them. I think that this, the online thing, is one part of that. But I also think we need to do that somehow or other face to face. So if there are any of you out there who know that there's other people who watch Church at Home, that you live in the same area, I really encourage you to create your own little group. Maybe once a week get together and pick an episode or one of my videos and watch them. Or do that with something else. It could be Beau of the Fifth Column. It could be, a church service that you really actually appreciate. Could be, Ed Trevor's Church Without Walls, things like that. But do it where there's two or three of you gathered about one screen rather than each person on their own screen. Find people with whom you can share community so that you can share this kind of community as well. Have a great day. God bless you. And thank you for being part of my online community. You mean the world to me. You really do. God bless.